Hello there and welcome. Recently, I made a video on this channel about Nintendo being hacked, and I went from a game developer's perspective on how people at Nintendo, their lives could potentially be affected by it. The response in the comments was not quite what I expected. There were a lot of people saying Nintendo deserved to be hacked. They don't deserve to have what they've got. Can it happen again? Make it happen again. Nintendo is an evil company, and there was a lot of negative response to that video because I said that Nintendo being hacked was a bad thing, and yet all these people said it's a good thing. Now, while I don't necessarily agree with some of these comments, it actually got me thinking about it in a different way because there were some comments that really caught my eye. Nintendo is well known for taking people to court over the silliest little things, and I do agree with that sentiment. Nintendo is also a very bad company in terms of trying to rip you off. Look at the price of Mario Kart World, it isn't worth $80. I agree with that as well. And I can understand these people who have all this sentiment building up and feeling that Nintendo is just not a gaming company for them anymore. But one of these comments, and it really, like I say, really got me thinking, is about game preservation. And I had to look at this from a different perspective. So, if Nintendo had been hacked in a way that had all their source code stolen, which it wasn't in the end, it turns out it was just like some web stuff that had been stolen, so it's nothing dangerous or potentially destroying to Nintendo. Some people will say, oh, that's a shame. But anyway, going back to the original point here, Nintendo is not for game preservation. All they want to do is take people to court, and I don't agree with that. There are many people throughout Nintendo's lifetime who want to preserve Nintendo games, and Nintendo don't want you owning those games. They would rather take you to court for a game from 1994 than actually try and preserve that game. They can't make money on those games anymore, whether physical or whatever. They could try to sell them on the digital storefront, that's fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that games are preserved. Now, I want to take a game that you've probably maybe played but maybe not heard of because it has a bit of a different name. Let's talk about Holy Magic Century, or as it's known in the US, Quest 64. That game has absolutely no chance of coming out anywhere ever again, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be lost to time. It needs to be preserved. What happens when all the cartridges that people own of that go forever and disappear? If there are no backups of that online, that game's gone forever. It's just never coming back. But if you have a backup of that somewhere online, Nintendo will want to come for you. They will come and they will take you to court because you shouldn't have that, you shouldn't own that, blah, 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 blah. That's not pro game preservation. It just isn't. And so having source code stolen from Nintendo could effectively mean that we can preserve that game. We can preserve that information because Nintendo has no intention of preserving anything. So, coming back to the question, did Nintendo deserve to be hacked? My stance on it has changed since the last video. I still don't think they deserve to be hacked, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that these hacks are happening to Nintendo. Whether it is the Giga Leak or whether it is a small hack like what's happened in this case, it just means that maybe these people who claim to be bad actors, try and threaten Nintendo, give us some money or we'll release all this, blah, 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 blah. They're not the sort of people that you would want to hack Nintendo. It is the good people. It is the people who are for game preservation and their only intent is to grab information that they can and not necessarily hold Nintendo hostage and their data hostage and all that kind of stuff, but they need to take that and actually preserve it somehow. Either that or Nintendo changes its entire stance on game preservation. Now, when it comes to something like Nintendo 64, yeah, there are ways of getting that on to online for Nintendo. You can play it, but then when you come into the realms of GameCube, Nintendo Wii, and yeah, we get into the shovelware era of gaming at this point. But in 100, 200 years' time, what are the odds of all this physical media being there? It's probably not going to be, or it's going to be few and far between. Or your copy of FIFA 96 is actually going to cost about $7,000 because it's just so rare at that point in 200 years' time. And to be fair, in 200 years' time, if you've still got a copy of FIFA 96, yeah, you're going to be in quids in, but you're not going to be here in 200 years' time. None of us are, unless we find time travel. But that's a whole different story. So I guess the question to you now is, although a lot of you may think that Nintendo deserved it, again, I still don't think they deserve it, but I'm not saying it's a bad thing that these things are happening. Where is your stance on this? Because I am sure that no doubt a lot of people who look at Nintendo and take the negatives are quite firm in what they feel for Nintendo. Look at game preservation, as I say, for example. If you're pro game preservation, Nintendo is not a good company for that. But if we look at somebody like Gary Bowser, and I'm going to briefly touch on Gary Bowser here, Nintendo sued him into oblivion basically, and do a little bit of research on that. Go to Google, have a quick type in. But I don't think that should have happened because, yes, Gary Bowser may not have been the best person to do what he did. There were bad intentions there, but at the end of the day, Nintendo will sue anybody for the slightest little thing. Another kind of view of this is when Nintendo tried to take down people that were playing games on YouTube and putting videos on. It's like, no, Nintendo, just no. So again, I really do sympathize and agree with a lot of what people are saying when they say Nintendo deserved to be hacked. Because let's face it, of the three major companies who are in the video game world now, and that is Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, I would say Nintendo are the worst. They are the most evil of the three. They are the most careless of the three. They don't care about gamers. And I know company is business. Yeah, they don't care about you. But at least Microsoft and Sony try to look like they're for the gamers. They've got Phil Spencer's ugly mug saying, "Oh, we love gamers. You mean everything to us." And then you've got Sony, who kind of are a bit faceless now, but at least they try to give us something. Whereas Nintendo just say, "Give us your money. Give us your money now." That's all Nintendo do. And does it mean it's going to be the downfall of Nintendo? No, probably not. Nintendo sits on a mountain of cash. But realistically, if they keep on this trajectory, Nintendo is not going to survive the next 20, 30, 40 years because gamers are becoming cleverer, they're becoming smarter, they're becoming more savvy, and they know where their loyalties need to lie. And so, again, it comes back to the people that say Nintendo deserved to be hacked. You know where your loyalties lie, and I respect that. I respect that a lot because if that's how you truly feel, that is not effectively voting with your wallet, which we know is a useful practice. It's not necessarily voting with your wallet, but it is voting with your voice, making yourself heard. And if the collective amount of people say, Nintendo, no, we've had enough, which it clearly is at this point, Nintendo may be forced to change. But will they? I don't know. I feel like they're, much like my wife, very, very stubborn. Yeah, exactly. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below about this Nintendo hack. And again, I know it was only a little one. It's nothing serious at all, but it could have been. So if Nintendo were to get hacked again and a lot of source code stolen, where's your stance on it? It's illegal. No doubt it's illegal, but it sure helps game preservation, which is a very, very good thing. So it's a grey area for me. It's a very grey area, but I still stand by that they don't deserve to be hacked because people's lives are literally at risk. But then I suppose you could have the argument, well, if you want to work for an evil corporation, then that's on you. But again, so yeah, let me know your thoughts and comments on this whole situation with Nintendo. And there will be a couple of other videos on the screen now if you want to watch any of those. A little subscribe button just down below if you fancy subscribing and seeing content every single week here on this channel. But I do appreciate you watching. Leave a like if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. Hopefully we'll see you in one of my next videos. Take care.